Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar, Mad About Middle Grade. I am Ronny Khuri, Associate Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist. And before we begin, I will go over some technical details. If you're in the audience, you are in listen-only mode. But we do welcome any questions you may have. So on the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. So if you do have a question, or if you need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. So we will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we should have some time for open Q&A at the end of our session today. If there are questions that we can't get to, our panelists will be able to follow up directly with more answers after the webinar. Links to today's slides and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download these materials at any time by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. And today we will have the pleasure of hearing from Elise Levine, Director of Sales and Marketing at Shadow Mountain Publishing, Vicki Van Sickle, Director of Marketing and Publicity at Tundra Books, and Terry Borzamato Greenberg, VP of Marketing and Publicity at Holiday House and Pixel+Ink. And first up, we have Elise Levine. She is an industry veteran who has worked on a wide variety of titles from Nancy Drew to the Arden Shakespeare. She left New York to move west to work for Shadow Mountain Publishing. The floor is now yours, Elise.
Okay, thank you, Ronny. And go to the next slide. And then the next one. And Shadow Mountain is probably best known for our middle grade fantasy. This is the Dragon Watch sequel series to Fablehaven. And this is book 4, just out in October. It takes place in an Olympic-style gladiator arena where enslaved dragons battle giants who are ruled by a powerful giant queen. And instead of talking about the plot of this book, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the readers of these series. Not long ago, I met a girl at an autographing for Brandon Mull, and I asked her, what is it about dragons that makes them so popular? I'm not sure I understand. And she thought about it for a minute, and she said, well, I think dragons are really misunderstood. People think they're mean and scary, but we just need to get to know them better. And I love sharing that insight because I think, like me, you can find that there are many wonderful conversations to be had using dragons as metaphors for human emotions from fans of the series who tend to be very tender-hearted kids who sometimes feel like outsiders. Next slide. These are the companion books to the series. The Caretaker's Guide to Fablehaven is the first visual discovery of what the mythical creatures in Fablehaven might look like. And it's written as if the reader of the book is the new caretaker. So it's got all sorts of insider information only a caretaker would know. And the Fablehaven Book of Imagination has all sorts of activities, writing essays. You can even create an origami dragon. Coming up next year, Legend of the Dragon Slayer. 50 illustrations, one on every spread. And it's the never before published history and visual discovery of the origin story of Dragon Watch, along with insights on the series from author Brandon Mull. It also has some clues and character secrets, which will turn up in the 5th and final book, Return of the Dragon Slayers, coming out in fall of 2021. Smarter Than a Monster is a picture book by Brandon Mull, and it teaches kids good social habits and how to cope with their fears using humor. So for example, in the book it says, some kids are afraid of clowns and a lot of monsters dress up like clowns. How can you tell the difference? Environment. If you see a clown at the circus, you're probably safe. But if you see a cloud in the woods, run. It also says that monsters hate the smell of soap, so be sure to keep yourself clean. It says that monsters think that Halloween is a parade in their honor. And in the text it says, use your imagination and knowledge to outsmart and defeat monsters, meaning fears. And I think this is a really timely book for our pandemic era when we don't really yet know the psychological effects of the disruption of kids' social development. Two modern-day kids find in their library the Lost Diaries of Lewis Carroll, which opens up a portal back to Wonderland. There they see the familiar characters who have now become dangerous monsters. And so our two protagonists represent two aspects of the Wonderland stories. Celia, the girl, is logical and a math whiz, but she's dyslexic and she hates reading. Her mom's a librarian, by the way. And Tyrus, the boy, is a self-described book nerd who's very creative. And together they represent logic and imagination. Both are needed to work through the challenges in this adventure. Champion's Quest is an RPG, a role-playing game, fantasy, like Dungeons and Dragons, which begins in a weird place called Hob and Bogey's Curiosity Shop. This is a gaming store with window displays of models of dragons and miniature warriors and monsters, all of which prove far too tempting for our protagonists, and they wander in to take a closer look. And that transports them from their small town in West Virginia right into the Champion's Quest game. And there they have to work together as a team to overcome their real-world vulnerabilities and believe in themselves as champions to outwit and outplay their game foes. And Hob and Bogey, the shop owners, are in the game as the forces of good and evil. The main characters are racially and ethically diverse, and they represent a wide range of life experiences. The two boys are foster kids living in a group home, and one struggles with panic attacks. And one of the girls is new in town and is the target of bullies. Real is a story about a girl with non-speaking autism who wants to go to public school and has to overcome the social and learning challenges and the objections of students and their parents who do not understand autism and want her sent away to a special education school where she's had many bad experiences. Real shows non-speaking autism as experiencing the world differently. So for example, Charity, our protagonist, sometimes has a very heightened awareness of sounds and smells being too strong. And in the book, she describes this as feeling attacked, which triggers fits of frustration. But as her classmates spend more time with her, better understanding leads to greater acceptance and even friendship. Real is based on the true story of one of the co-authors, Peyton Goddard. And Peyton asked me to tell you that it's important for people to see her arduous struggle to communicate. It's something that we all take for granted every day. You say, I'm too hot, I'm too cold, I'm hungry. But she has to put exhausting effort into every single interaction because she says communication is what makes us human. And in our Edelweiss catalog, you'll find author videos, one from Peyton and one from Carol Kujak, and a fantastic and really helpful download called, a PDF download called Tips for Inclusion for both teachers and kids. Told from the point of view of Stella, who is a beagle who works in law enforcement. And one day she's out on a routine call and she gets momentarily distracted and she misses the scent of an explosive, which eventually detonates, taking the life of her handler. Stella experiences severe anxiety and blames herself. She thinks, surely she must be a bad dog. The dog training expert agrees to foster her, and although sad, Stella becomes fond of the trainer's daughter, Chloe, who has epilepsy. As they spend more time together, Stella realizes that she can detect a chemical surge before Chloe has a seizure and warn her. And in doing so, Stella finds a new purpose to her life of service. Now, even though the book is told as first person from Stella, the dog is not fully anthropomorphized. She's still a dog, and she doesn't fully understand the human world. So there are many, many, many tearful, emotional moments of feeling Stella's grief and fear and loneliness. But then there are also a lot of funny dog moments, like when Stella sees Chloe returning her library books to the drop-in, but Stella obviously can't read, and she thinks it's a trash can, and she wonders why her girl is throwing the books in the garbage when she seems to enjoy reading so much. Alexis is a native Hawaiian, but not long ago she was startled in a cove by the sight of a viper moray eel. Now Alexis is afraid to go in the water for fear of what might be lurking beneath. Her grumpy neighbor, Uncle Tanaka, is a retired marine biologist who introduces her to a deformed sea turtle he is nurturing back to health. Of course, the turtle at first scares her, but Tanaka assures her, don't worry, sea turtles are very gentle creatures, and they are also ancient symbols of wisdom and good luck. As they gather marine specimens together, she begins slowly to see the ocean through Tanaka's eyes. One day, Tanaka has a medical emergency in his boat, and Alexis has to overcome her fear of the water and be strong like the sea to get him medical attention. And this title features a multicultural cast of Pacific Islanders. Willa's mom is a marine biologist who suddenly dies, and she can't quite cope with the loss. Willa sees a whale who begins to speak to her, and they develop a very caring friendship until the day when the whale says to Willa that it's time for her pod to migrate and they have to say goodbye. But she tells her, don't worry, because they've spent time together and they've developed a close relationship and they've showed how much they care about each other, they will always remain in each other's hearts. And this, of course, shows Willa a way to finally say goodbye to her mother, but still keep her memory alive in her heart. Many of our backlist titles in our empathy building catalog on Edelweiss are now once again available as EARCs, in case you missed them. This book takes place in Northern California in the 1930s. Ming doesn't quite feel like she belongs either in her American culture or in her Chinese culture at home, but she has two wishes. One, she longs to sing in the school Christmas choir, but every year her teacher says no, and it's understood it's because she's Chinese. And two, she wants a big sparkly Christmas tree like the one she sees in the department store window. But Mama, who is traditional Chinese, won't hear of it. Pops takes her to see an old family friend whose house is filled with beautiful symbols of Chinese culture. He then takes her to an altar at the base of the sequoia, created by Chinese miners decades ago. And Pops says to her, I was 14 when I came from China. I worked with my father in San Francisco. When there was trouble, he brought me to this mountain. Here, he said, we are not foreigners. Here we are men, a small part of nature's greatness. And Ming realizes that all cultures have cherished symbols worth celebrating. She Stood for Freedom is a story of a white Southern teenager who found herself on the front lines of the civil rights movement, Joan Trumpauer Mulholland. The picture book edition is told through amazing collage artwork, which somehow conveys the turmoil of the 1960s. The middle grade edition, which you see at the top of the slide, has the same artwork, but also has primary source documents from Joan's own collection. This is a powerful story of social activism and change being demanded by ordinary citizens. In the book, Joan says, I didn't want to change the world. I wanted to change my world. And there's a downloadable reader's guide on Edelweiss to this book. I have just a handful of adult titles, which are suitable for young readers. Frontier Grid is a collection of short biographies of women who settled the American West. These pioneers faced constant hardship, but managed to thrive and break a lot of barriers. One became a hotel entrepreneur. One was a frontier doctor. Many of them became social activists. One lived her life disguised as a man and became a renowned stagecoach driver. In Women of the Blue and Gray, it's about an era when women had no vote, but the Civil War literally brought activism into their front yards. Some disguised themselves as men and became soldiers. Others were charming spies who got unsuspecting men to blab war secrets. And there are dozens more fascinating little-known biographies. Invisible Heroes of World War II and Slave Stealers are similar backlist nonfiction titles, which tells history as the compelling stories of real people swept up in the cultural and political events of their day. And I hope these titles will spark an interest in nonfiction with your readers. This is an eye-opening story of a triumph for social justice activists. It takes place in the 1880s in San Francisco. Dolly Cameron is a real-life historical figure who helped free thousands of Chinese women who were tricked into coming to America by being told they would marry wealthy husbands, but they were beaten, drugged, and forced into lives of despair and prostitution. The local authorities either turned a blind eye or they took bribes and didn't care. So it was up to a group of local women to take matters into their own hands, freeing the women physically and fighting for decades in the courts to give them legal status in America. Although the subject matter is an uncomfortable truth, it's told in a way that conveys the injustice without being graphic about the sexual exploitation. This is a great title to better understand the wounds of past injustices, to explain our current racial divisions. This is new from Cameron Wright and his usual gut punch human drama about an American GI who works in the dangerous bomb squad in London during the Blitz, and a young woman who he thinks is British, but she is actually a German and a Jew who fled Berlin and is living under false papers. And they do what people are supposed to do. They try to carry on and connect with each other, but they are living under the very heavy wartime burden of constantly facing not only their own mortality, but the mortality of everybody else around them. And this is a timely topic of courage and connection for our pandemic times. And then finally, Proper Romance series is clean content, meaning there's no onstage sex, so it's suitable for all ages. And in Proper Romance, our heroines are in no way damsels in distress awaiting rescue. These are all women of privilege who have the rug pulled out from under them, and they have to first figure out, who am I if I am not the label society gave me? And then the search for true and unconditional love. And our sales of romance, like a lot of other publishers, have doubled since the pandemic months. Next week, I'll be sending you an email with quick links to request EARCs of the books we discussed today, or you can go now and find them on Edelweiss or NetGalley. Our titles are also sold as ebooks to libraries on all your usual popular platforms. And our authors are also available for virtual appearances, which you can sign up for in the email I'll be sending, or I also put links in the Edelweiss catalog under each individual title. Thank you so much for your time, and back to Ronny, our moderator.
Thank you so much, Elise. And next up, we have Vicki Van Sickle. Vicki is the Director of Marketing and Publicity at Penguin Random House Canada Young Readers. She is also the author of a number of acclaimed novels for children, including The Winnowing and the picture books Teddy Bear of the Year and If I Had a Griffin. Vicki started her career as a bookseller at the Flying Dragon Bookshop in Toronto and credits her love of children's books to the teachers and librarians who saw a spark and fed it with lots of books and encouragement. Take it away, Vicki.
Thank you so much, Ronny, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm all ready for Halloween weekend, as you can see. As you can probably tell from my bio, I eat, sleep, and breathe children's books, and middle grade is one of my favorite categories. So I'm so excited to take you through our must-read titles today. For those of you who are new to us, Tundra is an imprint of Penguin Random House Canada Young Readers, along with Penguin Teen Canada and Puffin Canada. All of these titles are available across North America. And if you're joining us from the United States, wherever you get your Random House children's kids books, there are distributors. So that's where you can find these books. Next slide, please. So first up, for fans of classic fantasy, like these two books here, we have, next slide, The Barren Grounds. This is the first book in the Missawa trilogy. It is a lead title for us in a series we just can't stop talking about. It's already a national bestseller in Canada, and we think it has great appeal outside our borders. This is big, epic, own voices fantasy told with humor, suspense, and memorable characters. Think Rick Riordan Presents featuring Indigenous culture. In this series, author David Robertson wanted to approach a European Narnia-style narrative, but explore his own Cree background and traditional Indigenous stories from his community. The book begins in a foster home where two Indigenous children are having a hard time fitting in both at home and at school with their new foster parents and new friends. But then they discover a portal into another world where they meet Ochek, the only hunter supporting his starving community. Together, accompanied by a sassy squirrel, is there any other kind, they embark on a dangerous mission to save the community from an eternal winter. I really love this cover, which has kind of a modern, fresh Star Wars vibe. Next slide. The book is getting great reviews, including a star from Kirkus. I particularly like what they say here in terms of it deftly and compellingly centering Indigenous culture, which is something I think we all need right now. Next slide. Dave is a fantastic presenter, and he has a very warm and generous style. He's the author of YA novels, graphic novels, and the critically acclaimed picture book, When We Were Alone, which is illustrated by Julie Flett. He's very active on social media, so please feel free to get a sense of him online there. Next. So for fans of these classic outdoor survival stories, next slide, we have Red Fox Road by Frances Granslade. This is a suspenseful survival story in which 13-year-old Francie finds herself alone in the woods after her father and then her mother set off in search of help when their truck breaks down en route to the Grand Canyon. Survival stories bring out the best or the worst in people, and Francie is definitely at her best. She considers herself an adventurer and has always wanted to go it alone in the woods, and her practical personality, love of nature, and obsession with survival manuals definitely come in handy. I really love that the hero of this book is female, as most outdoor survival stories are centered on boys or men. Next slide. One of my favorite things about this book is how beautifully and lovingly Frances Greenslade writes about the natural world. Both the author and the protagonist have such love and respect for the outdoors that you never truly feel worried for them. Next slide. We're thrilled that this is a JLG selection, and there's also a fantastic audiobook, although I don't recommend you listen to it while walking through the woods, or depending on your personality, maybe that's the perfect way to listen to it. Next up, slide. For readers of mystery and historical fiction, including the new Netflix sensation Enola Holmes. Next slide. We have Aggie Morton, Mystery Queen. This new mystery series imagines the life of Agatha Christie as a tween, when she's first bitten with a mystery bug and starts investigating crimes with her new friend, Hector Poirot, based on Agatha Christie's most famous creation, Hercule Poirot. Those of us who work with tweens know how much they love mysteries, and this series is truly top-notch. The first book in the series, The Body Under the Piano, was published this spring, and Peril at Owl Park came out earlier this month. Next slide. Author Martha Josselin recreates the early 1900s with incredible detail, and her whodunit plots are just as sharp and twisty as Christie's. And while there's lots to love here for fans of Christie, you do not need to be familiar with Agatha Christie or her work to appreciate these books. I actually recently watched the Enola Holmes adaptation, which I really loved, and I think it's a very apt comp here. I think we may be on the cusp of a new trend about historical female protagonists with literary connections, and I think Aggie Morton certainly fits right in that category. Next slide. Aggie Morton has been optioned for film, so we're keeping our fingers crossed, and there will be more books in this series. It's off to a great start with Junior Library Guild selections and great reviews, including the starred one from Shelf Awareness. Next. We do have a discussion guide available for this one, and there's also a really fantastic audiobook. The reader is British, and really, you need a cup of tea and just cozy right in, and it's a really great listening experience. Next slide. For fans of epic fantasy featuring magic and mythological creatures, we have, next slide, A Royal Guide to Monster Slaying. This series is by New York Times bestselling author Kelly Armstrong. Kelly is one of those authors who can write anything, and she has lots of adult fans who will love her work. I was delighted to discover that Kelly totally understands a middle grade audience, and these books are just as entertaining as her older work, but center magical creatures and humor, making it perfect for tweens. This series follows Rowan and her brother Rid as they try to keep the peace between humans and magical creatures in their kingdom. Next slide. The first book received 2-starred reviews, made many best of the year lists, and even drew comparisons to the high priestess of kids fantasy, Tamora Pierce. Next slide. In this new book, The Griffin's Lair, there are even more creatures and more laughs. In each book, Kelly includes Rowan's field notes, which are annotated illustrations of the creatures in the book, which gives the novels a little something extra and I think sets them apart. Next slide. While these books are top-notch adventures, my favorite thing about this series is the sense of humor, which I think provides the perfect balance for the action and adventure. Next slide. Kelly is available for virtual visits, and I happened to see her present this summer, and she has a fantastic presentation called The Science of Magic and Monsters, in which she describes how all the creatures are based on science, not just magic. Next slide. And now we have yet another survival story, but this one has a very specific twist. Next slide. A prehistoric twist. Clan is a survival story set in an icy prehistoric world. In addition to a great wilderness survival story, this is a lovely animal friendship story as well. And kids who love books about animals will love the relationship between Atlatl and a saber-toothed tiger cub, one of the best buddy comedies I think I can ever think of, that he rescues and befriends. Sigmund has a very clean, direct writing style, which makes this a good pick for readers who struggle with longer books or want something engaging and adventurous that isn't too intense. Next slide. He's also a seasoned presenter and very keen to do virtual school visits. Next. For contemporary readers and fans of books that center current issues like Dress Coded, we have the wonderful, next slide, Me and Banksy. A Banksy-style protest brings a group of students at a middle school together in this funny, contemporary upper middle grade novel about security, privacy, and using art to make a stand. Dominica's school is covered in cameras, and someone is hacking into them and posting embarrassing moments for the whole school to see. Who has access to these cameras, and why are they doing it? Dominica and her best friends, Holden and Sandvi, are determined to find out, and in the process, start an art-based student campaign against cameras in the classroom. Next slide. This is a great book for kids who are interested in social justice and activism, two topics that are now more relevant and urgent than ever. It has an urban setting and features a diverse cast of well-developed characters. I've been having a lot of conversations lately about intermediate fiction or upper middle grade books, and I think that this is a book that truly sort of falls right in that category. These are kids who are in 7th through 9th grade who aren't necessarily ready for the intensity of YA, but have moved beyond the gentler, traditional tone of middle grade, and I think this is a perfect book for them. I think one of Tanya's strengths is dialogue, and her conversation is witty, authentic, and keeps the book zipping along at a fast pace that devoted and reluctant readers will both appreciate. Next slide. There is a discussion guide for this, lots of other curriculum collections, and we really hope that you get a chance to check this one out. Next slide. So that is our list. I just wanted to let you know that we will definitely send the links, but if you have any questions for me or want to know more about our discussion guides, please feel free to email us or visit us at www.tundrabooks.com. Next slide. And feel free to look us up on NetGalley. Here's a little preview for a book we have coming in the spring. Peter Lee's Notes from the Field is a really fun, sweet Own Voices middle grade, and we've opened that up. So if you have NetGalley access, we'd be happy to give you this a copy. Next slide. And that's it for me. So there's all of our socials and our email. Feel free to get in touch with us, and happy Halloween, everyone.
Thank you so much, Vicki. Next up, we will hear from Terry Borzamato Greenberg. Terry, Vice President of Marketing and Publicity at Holiday House and their new sister company, Pixel+Ink, is a publishing veteran with more than 3 decades in children's books. At Holiday House, she oversees marketing and publicity efforts to librarians and educators. Terry is a winner of the Ted Hipple Service Award for exemplary service and dedication to the Assembly on Literature for Adolescents of the NCTE. She has served on a number of American Library Association and other industry committees, and currently serves as treasurer of the Board of Directors of the Children's Book Council. Over the years, Terry has worked with such esteemed authors and illustrators as Russell Friedman, Mordecai Gerstein, Gail Gibbons, Patricia Riley Giff, Jerry Pinkney, Maurice Sendak, and Jacqueline Woodson, among many others. The floor is yours, Terry.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Hello, everyone. As you heard, I'm Terry Borzamato Greenberg, and I am delighted to share with you a great selection of middle grade books from Holiday House and our brand new sister company, Pixel+Ink. We are highlighting recently published and upcoming new hardcovers today, plus a few titles that you may not have seen earlier this year. We know that you'll agree we're publishing some important middle grade that is not to be missed. Next slide. First, I'd like to tell you a little about Pixel+Ink. This new house publishes only series fiction, picture books, chapter books, middle grade, and graphic novels. It is headed by Editor-in-Chief Bethany Buck, and the books are developed specifically to have cross-media potential. And now on to the books, starting with graphic novels. And you can go one more slide. Black Sand Beach, Are You Afraid of the Light? Launches a graphic novel series about a haunted summer vacation, written by the best-selling and award-winning comic book and picture book author-illustrator Richard Fairgray. In book 1, 12-year-old Dash and his best friend Lily are spending the summer at Black Sand Beach, where Dash's family has a house. But nothing is as it seems from the very beginning. The beach house is a shack. Dash's weird relatives are there, but more alarming is the zombie ram that crashes through the front yard and the ghosts that call out to Dash from the lighthouse. Each book in this dynamic series contains full-color graphic novel panels on every page and multiple connected stories. An interesting fact is that Black Sand Beach happens to be a real place in Australia where the author used to go as a child. I don't know how many things he saw there, but the beach was real. You and your young readers who love mysteries, horror, or just plain eerie stories will love this series. Be sure to check out Tales from Black Sand Beach, the podcast inspired by the books. Richard is a wonderful storyteller, and I think you'll really enjoy listening to him. Graphic novel series, Carlton Crumple Creature Catcher, is the super funny and madcap adventure starring Carlton Crumple on a quest to stop the munching monsters from taking over every Chubsy cheeseburger restaurant in America. Kirkus said about the book, those who want humor to have a fast and furious velocity should be right at home. Author-artist David Fremont has worked on many famous TV shows from Nickelodeon, as well as Cartoon Network and Disney, and now he's turned his talents to books for middle graders. Really great fun. Dolphin Girl is the hilarious new series by Netflix storyboard artist Zach Smith, starring a spunky little superhero who fights bad guys in her dolphin costume. Dolphin Girl faces off against fearsome-ish foes to save her Midwest suburban town, Dear Burbia, which is in Michigan, where she and her dad are planning their tropical-themed restaurant pizza paradise. But danger is never far away. This fresh take on the superhero story is super adorable and funny with just the right amount of sass. It's perfect for fans of Zeta the Space Girl and Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Next slide. We have some interior art from Black Sand Beach. So you can see Richard's art. And one thing that's really interesting is Richard is legally blind, but he creates such intricately detailed art here. So that's just something to look out for. Next slide is Carlton Crumple. And this is totally different, really funny. And finally, Dolphin Girl, Trouble in Pizza Paradise. Next slide, we've got a sneak peek at Carlton Crumple Creature Catcher #2, Tater Invaders. Next slide, with more hilarious antics, more fast food, and more zany monsters. This is for fans who like Lunch Lady and Dogman, but are looking for books at the next level up. Next slide, and then the next. We're on to some fiction from Pixel+Ink. The infamous Frankie LORDE follows the adventures of an international thief and his thief-in-training daughter, Frankie. Frankie can pick a lock in 1 second, throw together a disguise in 2, and steal a Bugatti in 3. But when Frankie's dad gets caught, she's returned to the real world and told she needs to be more normal. But Frankie doesn't do normal. Can she really fit in? Or will the opportunity to return to her roots be too hard to pass up? This book is great to hand to that reader who's aging out of middle grade, but not quite ready for YA. Next slide. When Life Gives You Lemons, Make Peach Pie is the first in the Great Peach Experiment series by Aaron Downing, coming in spring. Mix together a used food truck, a road trip that doesn't exactly go as planned, and a lot of pie. And you have the recipe for this sweet middle grade series starter, brimming with humor, heart, and a family you'll fall in love with. It's perfect for readers who like the Pendlewicks and the Vanderbeeks of 141st Street. Next slide. And then the next. We are ready to move on to Holiday House. In Pine Island Home by Newbery Honor and National Book Award winning author Polly Horvath, 4 newly orphaned siblings fear being separated and put into foster care. So the eldest sister comes up with a scheme to keep their situation hidden from everyone on Pine Island. This classic in the making has the charm of Little Women and plenty of adventure. Kirkus reviews in his starred review called it delightful, and we think you'll agree. Next slide. New York Times best-selling author and SpongeBob SquarePants head writer Stephen Banks is back in the 2nd book in the Middle School Bite series, Tom Bites Back. Here, everyone's favorite Van Wolfzam, next slide, really takes off as he gets flying lessons from the vampire bat who bit him back in book 1. Readers are obsessed with the first book in the series, and our favorite review quote was from Sam in New Jersey, who said, "Middle School Bites is lit." Your readers will love this book too. Next slide. Next up, we have Diane Salerni. This book is for anyone who loves historical fiction or mysteries. Eleanor Alice and the Roosevelt Ghosts is a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection. It's a one-of-a-kind alternate history novel in which young Eleanor and Alice Roosevelt take down the spirits haunting their legendary family. Think Pride and Prejudice with zombies, but with historical figures. Aaron Bowman, author of Contagion, said, "This book is a spooky, fast-paced, and inventive tale. Salerni expertly blends fact and fiction." For the next book, it's 1999, and 12-year-old Adam doesn't mind living at his uncle's bakery, the Biscuit Basket, on the Lower East Side of New York City, when a mysterious yet cheerful customer shows Adam a snow globe and says that adventure awaits him. It's too strange to be true, but Adam is soon whisked away from his imperfect but quiet life, first to Times Square in 1935, then a candle factory fire in 1967. In this time travel mystery, a debut novel from G.Z. Schmidt, she has crafted a world filled with serendipity, mystery, and adventure. This is for readers who would like Roald Dahl and Lemony Snicket. Next slide. Here we've got the spotlight on some really interesting nonfiction. Would you spy for your own country? In Surprising Spies by Karen Gray Ruel, you'll discover the World War II spies who lived among the shadows and the ones who lived in the limelight, disguised in plain sight. Josephine Baker and Major Leaguer Mo Berg are but a few of the daring spies who risked it all to deliver and protect crucial intel for the Allied powers in this thoroughly researched collection of biographies. Next slide. Never has natural history been so fun. Scientific accuracy and humor combined to tell the entire history of Earth in a comic book format. In History of the World in Comics, a paleontologist and a storyteller take two children through the birth of our planet. Next slide. The beginning of microbes and through the heyday of dinosaurs and beyond, with unfailing enthusiasm. This book has a starred review from SLJ. Next. Now we have some sneak peeks at spring, and we'll take a look first at A Place to Hang the Moon. This is a debut from Kate Albus and a JLG Gold Selection standard selection. It's about 3 orphan siblings during World War II who hope to find a forever home when they are evacuated from London to the countryside. It's perfect for fans of The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Bradley. We have a wonderful advance quote from 2-time Newbery Honor author Patricia Riley Giff, and that concludes with, "The story is unforgettable, beautifully told." And this is a Margaret Ferguson title. Next, we are delighted to welcome Dan Gutman, the award-winning author of several series, including My Weird School and The Genius Files, to the Holiday House list. Dan's standalone novel, Houdini and Me, follows 5th grader Harry Mancini, who is not Harry Houdini, the famous escape artist who died in 1926. But Harry does live in Houdini's old New York City home. He definitely knows everything there is to know about Houdini's life. What is Harry supposed to do then when someone starts texting him, claiming they're Houdini, and they're communicating from beyond the grave? Well, respond, of course. And when Houdini asks for help in coming back to life, it seems like an amazing chance for our Harry, or could it be Houdini's greatest trick of all? You'll have to read and see. Next slide. We are also thrilled to welcome the masterful Ian Lawrence to the Holiday House list. In Dead Man's Castle, Igor and his family are on the run from a man bent on revenge, and there's danger lurking around every corner. This is perfect for young readers with a taste for mystery and adventure. It's also a JLG Gold Standard selection. Next, in 6 Feet Below Zero by Enid Jones, siblings need to convince everyone that their deceased great Grammy is still alive. As part of an elaborate plan Grammy devised so that they can hold on to her property when she's gone. This is part Weekend at Bernie's and part Little Miss Sunshine. And I'm not going to talk about the freezer in the basement, but I guess I did just mention it. Next, Violet and the Pie of Life by Deborah Green stars 12-year-old Violet, who is a math whiz and 100% certain her calculating skills, graphs, and charts can help save her parents' marriage. This is a sensitive but funny read full of sharp observations from a savvy and irresistible protagonist. Next, in Daughter of the White Rose by Diane Zoller, can a common girl save a prince trapped in the Tower of London? Well, it's April, England, 1483. And in this girl-led medieval story of murder, betrayal, resilience, and growing up, readers do get up close and personal with one of history's nastiest villains, Richard II. Based on the real royal scandal of the princes in the Tower, this JLG Gold Standard selection is for anyone who loves historical novels like Catherine Cole Birdie or The Book of Boy. Next, we're pleased to introduce a new series on the Holiday House list. The Spyglass Sisterhood is by Marilyn Kay, whose replica series is an international bestseller. The series centers on 4 12-year-old girls and mixes classic themes with fresh conversations on justice, solidarity, and inclusivity, along with some light magic in the form of a magical spyglass. Ellie Makes Her Move is the first book, and each girl will take a turn at the spyglass in subsequent titles, confronting fears and sticking up for her peers. Next, these are some backlist essentials, or we're also saying check your shelves. We had a number of terrific middle grade books that came out early in the year, and we want to bring them to your attention just to make sure that you didn't miss them in all the commotion. So much going on. So be sure to check your shelves for first, Colossus of Rhodes. Christina Uss's debut novel, The Adventures of a Girl Called Bicycle, was named a Texas Bluebonnet Award Master List title, an amazing honor for a first book. Her recently published Colossus of Rhodes is just as quirky and fun. This book has 3-starred reviews and is a perfect read for the middle grader who loves Carl Hiaasen books. And it's a good reminder to own what makes you special and use it to make a difference. Next, Brother's Keeper by Julie Lee has received 4-starred reviews and is a JLG Gold Standard selection. It's an Own Voices book, an almost unbelievable story of endurance and survival based on the real experiences of Julie's mother, who escaped North Korea as a child refugee during the Korean War. The immediacy of this stunning debut has awed everyone who reads it, so we encourage to do so if you haven't already. Next, in Ripped to the Rescue by the inimitable Miriam Halami, it's 1940 and Nazi bombs are raining down on London, but 13-year-old bike messenger Jack has just discovered something unbelievable. It's a stray dog with a surprising talent. Based on true episodes during the London Blitz in World War II, this action-packed and touching story explores the beginnings of search and rescue dogs and the bravery and resourcefulness of young people determined to do their part for their country. Next, After the Worst Thing Happens. This is Audrey Vernick's newest novel. In it, 12-year-old Army Moran feels like her life has been blown to bits. She left chocolate cupcakes where her beloved dog could eat them, and everyone knows that dogs shouldn't have chocolate. Army is left reeling from this terrible mistake, but finds that she's able to channel the grief about the loss of her dog to protect a young girl in need. Subjects include guilt, grief, neurodiversity, and an unconventional family structure and dynamic, and the book ultimately shows the power of the bond between dogs and people and trusting oneself. The Places We Sleep is a stunning debut novel in verse by Carolyn Brooks Dubois about a family divided, a country going to war, and a girl desperate to feel at home. It's early September 2001, and 12-year-old Abby is the new kid at school again. Next slide. We hope that you enjoyed our Mad About Middle Grade features today, and invite you to visit us online at holidayhouse.com, where you'll find all of our books plus Pixel+Ink. There's middle grade YA plus books for younger readers, with so many guides for you to share with your young readers as well as educators. All of our books are available on Edelweiss for preview, and more are also available as ebooks. Be sure to sign up for our e-newsletter, where you'll hear about our newest books and see exclusive videos from our amazing authors. Thank you for spending time with us today. Please feel free to be in touch, and I hope to see you in person soon. Bye.
Thank you so much, Terry. And we do have time at the moment. So we'll open up Q&A if there is any. So as a reminder to our audience, on the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. So if you have a question in the next little bit, if you could just click on the Q&A button and type in your question, and we'll round them up. So let me do a quick look here. And if I'll direct them to the panelists if we have them. We do have a lot of thank yous coming from the audience, which is nice. Thank you. Elise, if you're back there was a question earlier from Nick about the book Real. I believe it was about a resource you mentioned. Let me scroll here.
Yeah, it's tips for inclusion. And so I put the link in there.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
And the tips were written by both authors. And for me, it was really eye-opening. It's things like assume competence. You know, this was even my experience in speaking to Peyton Goddard via Zoom in our author meeting. She has to type on a keyboard that gives an electronic voice. And all she asked of me is to just be patient and not be patronizing and not finish her sentences, which is the easiest thing to do. And I have to say, my personal experience there was I've never felt so appreciated as an audience in just being patient and letting her type out her responses and her statements. And even though it took a really long time, it was really a very emotional and moving experience to have that interaction with her. And so I really recommend going to not only to get a EARC of Real, but also downloading those tips for inclusion.
Excellent, thank you. Let me see what else we have here.
Ronnie, I could respond to one, or at least one that I know is for me. I did say The Book of Boy, and while that is a young adult novel and these are middle grade, it's that historical fiction that our editor thought would be a good comparison. There's also a question about how do our audience members preview books and does it cost? I will speak for Holiday House. I know many publishers are on Edelweiss. You heard Elise mention that, and NetGalley, but Holiday House is on Edelweiss. And if you have, all you have to do is register and there is no cost. You just have to click a button that asks to request a reading copy, and you'll download it for a specific period of time that the publisher designates. So you can get our preview copies that way.
And that's true for our titles as well. Thank you for mentioning that, Terry.
Certainly.
Excellent, thank you all. It looks like it is slowing down a bit. Some more thank yous. Terry, Jeffrey Katz did ask about Holiday House and multi-ethnic titles. I don't imagine you have a list handy, but you could
I
acknowledge.
don't, I was going to say, I don't have a list right here, but we do have a collection on Edelweiss, so you can find our titles there. And we do have on holidayhouse.com a pretty extensive thematic listing, which you can find from the About Books section. You can go to look at themes, and we're constantly updating that and adding new titles in. But if there's anything specific that you're looking for, feel free to be in touch directly.
Great.
And Anne, thank you for sending your contact information.
And I don't see any more questions popping up. I don't know if any panelists have anything they'd like to add before we wrap up. If not, then I will wrap things up. Thank you all so much for being with us.
Thank you all. It was a great pleasure. Bye.
Okay. So on Monday, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones, like those you see here. If you haven't already, be sure to check out Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post daily about all things books and library land. Not yet a subscriber? Pair the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. One more thank you to our sponsors, Holiday House and Pixel+Ink, Shadow Mountain Publishing, and Tundra Books. This concludes today's webinar.